Okay, nice. So welcome everyone to our second TAN Council recurring meeting. Today's agenda covers several important items, including answering some community questions, introducing our first TAN IP entitled Activating Issuance at the Application Layer, and some open discussion. Firstly, however, let's start with an overview of the TAN Council and the purpose of these recurring meetings. These recurring meetings serve 5 critical functions. They provide transparency to our community. They create a structured forum for proposal discussions, enabling authors to present to the council and community and to discuss, debate, and refine for formal proposal and voting consensus. They enable regular platform updates. They ensure consistent communication amongst council members. And finally, they allow direct community engagement through question and answer sessions. The Town Council is a local governance organisation within the Telcoin platform. Together, we serve as a provider and administrator of collective goods and services within the jurisdictional domain of the Telcoin Application Network, or TAN. The TAN Council, with our 6 members, makes decisions related to TAN improvements and policies through the TAN IP process. We need 5 out of 6 votes to approve proposals within a 120-hour voting period. Our key responsibilities include 1. Reviewing and voting on snapshot proposals. 2. Attending these bi-weekly meetings. 3. Providing regular community updates. 4. Monitoring TAN systems. And 5. Enforcing operational rules. We use Discord for day-to-day communication, the forum for informal proposal discussions, these recurring council meetings for proposal discussions, deliberation and refinement, and Snapshot for formal voting. So, since our last meeting, Liberty Lad, are you alright there?
I have read the proposition Liberty Lad posted. I don't fully agree with that proposition because when he asks for an easiest way for the referral system and drop it in the Metascore, I find it's already really easy. I don't know if it's only because I'm an iPhone user, but when I click on share, I can share it through any circle I want. So maybe the point to keep is maybe if you want to tune the QR code for a special event, why not? But I think the rest is not very important as the application is already fine about referral.
So are you talking about the Telcoin application?
Yeah, the one that Liberty Lad posted.
Was that on the forum?
He just put it in the Discord channel.
Okay, I can't see that. Liberty Lad, do you wanna speak to that? Are you there?
I think we went through that last week and determined that it was out of scope. Maybe I just provided that verbally. I thought I might have responded to it in Discord, but yeah, I think it's, you could introduce like a highly sort of customized by the community application infrastructure requirement that adjusts like, seasonally and stuff like that. But I think it's just a bit intrusive or a bit like right now we want to get like 1,000 applications onto the network from GSMA providers, and we want to like make that as easy as it can be. But I think that in principle, it's a great product research proposal to send to like a Telcoin Holdings Discord about how that system can be improved. But yeah, it either falls out of scope or it's too maybe intrusive. But I think in principle, it's a good idea just to share as feedback with the product org there, if that makes sense. I don't want to intrude, but I figured just to make things clear, he's talking about the QR code proposal and the referral link proposal that Liberty Lad shared in the TAN Council updates like a week and a half ago, maybe, or 2 weeks ago.
Oh, I see. Okay. Thanks for showing some color there. Yeah. Um, cool. If we're happy to park that there for now, then if that's been discussed previously, um, should we carry on? There were
Yeah, sure.
some questions over the last 2 weeks asked by the committee members. So I was trying to go through those, and then we'll get Parker to introduce the new TANIP. So we had 4 questions since our last meeting, and we'll run through those quickly. The first question was, is the upcoming proposal in terms of TEL issuance for staking? I was trying to discern if that was an issuance that was going directly to stakers within the app, or like to Telcoin Holdings because they have X people staked on the app. So the short answer to this is both. TGIP1 proposed a system of 3 different layers within the Telcoin platform. These layers are the Telcoin network, which is the blockchain, TELX, which is the liquidity layer, i.e. the collection of liquidity pools, and Telcoin application network, which is the collection of apps that are built on top of the other 2 layers. Telcoin network and TELX each have 1 miner group associated with them. For Telcoin network, the miners are the validators. For TELX, the miners are liquidity miners. Telcoin application network has 2 sets of miners. They've got stakers, who are individuals who stake TEL and connect with their personal network using referral codes. So many people in this call already do that. And then there are developers who stake TEL in TEL developer staking contracts and develop applications. Focusing on the stakers first, they have 2 revenue streams. Firstly, they earn a percentage of their referred users' fees in TEL. This comes from their referred users using the Telcoin app and paying fees to do so. These are supplementary to gas fees. The referrer can earn a portion of these fees based on how much TEL they have staked. The second revenue stream for stakers comes from harvesting TEL from Telcoin application network. This income is based on their network's adoption of the platform and is a pro rata share of their referred users' fees paid compared to other stakers each week. The exact implementation of this will be discussed in the first TAN improvement proposal. Developers also have 2 staking streams. Bear in mind that Telcoin Holdings is 1 application developer. Using them as an example, they earn revenue from users paying fees to them for in-app transactions, and then can also claim issuance from TAN based on their usage metrics. These will also be discussed in more detail in the TAN improvement proposal. TANIP activating TEL issuance at the application layer will implement the issuance revenue streams for developers and stakers. Does anyone have any more questions on that? Or does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And just about the numbers that are displayed, do we have to talk about it now or maybe later?
The numbers, are you referring to the TANIP, the draft proposal?
Yeah, for the developers,
We'll
exactly.
get to that. So Parker will introduce that soon, um,
Okay.
after we go through these questions. So 3 more questions, and then we can chat numbers and everything that's related. So the second question was, on the above, how will that translate in terms of mainnet coming online? For instance, is all of that going to move to mainnet and then would reside there? What about other developers that may put in place other staking type apps? I'm just trying to discern the guide rails here. So TAN and TELX currently operate on Polygon network. The decision to migrate these networks to Telcoin network lies with their respective councils, the TAN Council for TAN and the TELX Council for TELX. There are strong incentives to build and migrate applications to Telcoin network for GSMA application developers. First of all, there's TAN harvesting rules. As developers on the Telcoin application network, GSMA members mine TEL based on rules set, refined, and enforced by the TAN Council. Current application infrastructure requirements mandate that, upon mainnet release with 10 authorized validators, developers must offer their services on Telcoin network to harvest TEL. Developers harvest TEL competitively from TAN based on their application's pro rata share of fees versus other developers each week. Fees include referral fees paid to stakers, telex exchange fees, and telco and network gas fees paid by users. This structure encourages developers to launch and integrate their services with telco and network to maximize their TEL harvesting potential. In terms of TAN migration, therefore, according to existing harvesting rules, which incorporate telco and network gas fees into the base formula for developers to harvest TEL, upon its mainnet release with 10 authorized validators, the TAN Council will therefore be required to enforce those rules by, at a minimum, implementing developer staking contracts on TAN, TEL issuance and its mechanisms on TAN. Whether or not the TAN Council decides to maintain Polygon TEL issuance for stakers versus telco and network is an open discussion for the TAN Council to propose, debate and implement. Telco and network's fee structure supports long-term TEL sustainability. A portion of all TEL gas fees paid to access each block on telco and network are destroyed and regenerated to the TEL treasury. This mechanism ties the scarcity and sustainability of TEL issuance directly to block space demand on telco and network. Operating on telco and network offers unique advantages for GSMA members. As the blockchain network standard for the telecommunications industry, telco and network provides a natural platform for GSMA members. Developers can position themselves early in the first global, institutionally aligned blockchain for telecom services. It enables connection with every mobile user globally through a shared blockchain network for finance. While specific migration dates for TAN and TELX will be determined by their respective councils, these incentives are designed to encourage individual developers to build and integrate with telco and network once it's fully operational. The third question relates to other apps and features and what it would entail to get them integrated onto the wallet. This question is split into two parts. Firstly, is it a necessary requirement for an app to be utilized through the wallet, or just that its backbone sits on top of the network? To answer this, there is a set of application infrastructure standards that are required in order to harvest TEL from TAN. These are in the telcoin.org documentation, but I'll say them here again. Mobile interface to the Telcoin platform, an intuitive interface and system connected to telex and telcoin network services. Banking infrastructure, including at least one fiat on and off ramp for stablecoins. Staker capabilities, staker production, harvesting, and governance capabilities in place for users. Secure custody implementation, a secure multi-signature or multi-party computation wallet implementation for users. Trade router, connecting the app to telex markets for exchange, and KYC/AML systems, which verify the identity of users to ensure one user, one account, and compliance with local laws. The developer will also need to abide by the entry rules, which are listed in the documentation in order to be eligible for TAN emissions. Telcoin Wallet could therefore be used to tick the self-secured custody implementation requirement, but it's not necessary. Basically, app developers are incentivized to perform certain functions, but are not required to. An application developer can build whatever they want on Telcoin network, but if they don't follow the infrastructure standards and processes, they will not be able to receive any issuance. So the second part of that question asks, from a developer standpoint, if someone were to develop a service on top of the network, would they prefer to have an API to integrate or something like a more drop-in solution like using an iframe? This is purely based on developer preference. As long as developers follow processes and adhere to ongoing standards, have TEL staked and report metrics based on appropriate mechanisms each week, they can harvest TEL. These reporting mechanisms will be discussed in the TANIP. Does anyone have any questions on those?
That's okay, thanks.
Perfect. So the final question was referencing criteria and expectations for app developers within the documentation as vague. For example, what level of GSMA membership does a developer need, and what amount of tokens need to be staked and where? So I'd personally argue that the infrastructure standards are specific, but they're quite open. So any number of different apps can participate as long as they fit the criteria and follow the rules. This is meant to be an inviting and less strict form that invites GSMA members to participate in developing apps on the platform. A developer can have any level of GSMA membership. The lowest level of membership is the small company membership for companies with less than $50 million in revenue and costs around $15,000 annually. The developer and staker staking contracts are live on Polygon network, but they don't emit any TEL yet. This TANIP will activate them. There is no minimum amount of TEL to stake, but the amount of TEL staked determines how much developers can earn from issuance and their voting power within their minor group of application developers. I've rattled through a lot there. Does that make sense to everyone? Is everyone following along? Is anyone unsure of anything?
It looks okay for me.
Okay, perfect. So hopefully that's given you a bit of background in terms of the layers we're discussing and some of the mechanisms that are in place. I'll now hand over to Parker to run us through the first draft of the TAN improvement proposal for activating TEL issuance at the application layer.
Thank you, Leo, and great job, man. You've got a radio voice, by the way. I don't know if you knew that, but you do. It works. Like you could, like if you had a tutorial or something, I guarantee you I'd do that. Just to it's good. You're good at this. So love to see it. Proud of you. Great stuff, man.
Thank you very much.
So great job. So this proposal is near and dear to my heart. I've been thinking about how to bootstrap the application layer of blockchains in the Telcoin platform's context for years, and so now we're here. We voted in TGIP1 unanimously to approve these rules, and during the course of the year, being the only developer, we wanted to have the community approve them. We wanted the community to approve issuance instead of us in terms of implementing it as the only developer. And so we deferred that to you all, the TAN Council, and now have a proposal to bring to the table. And at a high level, just as background, the existing financial system is incredibly fragmented. It's operated by all these different, service providers that, they hold your money for you, they send your money for you, they exchange your money for you, and all you can do is hope and pray they don't take it in a lot of cases. And so it's incredibly expensive. These applications for finance are not integrated with each other. In fact, they are read-only access at best. And so, they're not integrated, and that introduces this sort of siloed nature of especially between countries. So for like cross borders, and so you have this existing financial system where, like, as an example, if you wanted to send money, from what in every country in the world, there has to be a sending bank and a receiving bank, and then generally, like, you really need there to be time overlap, and overall, there's sometimes up to like 5 different corresponding parties in between one cross-border remittance, and that ultimately costs like 5% to 7. I mean, 7. It's like 6.2% is the average. So we have this existing financial system that's disconnected, fragmented, inefficient, and so blockchain solve this by enabling money to flow as fluidly as data on the internet, enabling private property rights in cyberspace, so the ability to actually own things enforced cryptographically without any middlemen or intermediary banks to handle that. They enable direct access to markets. So when you think about that in the context of the world, that is like either your markets are in person or you're just using someone else, brokers, custodians, settlement agents, you name it, there's a middleman for it. And so blockchains connect people through these value networks that enable ownership on the internet. And so every blockchain can de facto be meaningfully categorized as having, as Leo put it earlier, these what we've structured in the Telcoin platform as this 3-layered value chain. You can think about it as the base layer property rights system that secures your ownership, enables you to transport value, store value, and in the case of Telco Network and other EVM compatible blockchains, create these on-chain programs that enable the middle and the upper layers, which I would consider, as Leo put it, as the liquidity layer. In our case with TELX, which is and then in a more broad sense, TELX could ultimately just be any on-chain good and service that any app wants to integrate, and that the TELX Council determines they want to incentivize. It doesn't have to just be exchange, but every blockchain has this goods and services layer. In the case of Bitcoin, for instance, BTC really is just that. There is no on-chain programming for BTC, and that's specifically designed that way. Ethereum took it to the next level with smart contracts. And so then there's the customer touch point layer, the application layer, or in our case, the Telcoin application network. And the problem with all of these existing blockchains is that they fail to incorporate the goods and services layer and the application layer into their ownership structure. With some exceptions, only the base layers, network miners, so in the case of Bitcoin, your literal miners that operate these massive machinery that secure the network as nodes. They're the only ones that are earning BTC issuance, and they participate in governance via their nodes. And so these things they don't include the entire ownership model, the entire value chain, the ownership model, despite the fact that you can program any ownership model that you want. And so they also operate in these legally regimeless structures that are de facto general partnerships with unlimited liability for anyone who writes on the forum. And they're usually just composed of this sort of disorganized institution that at worst cannot do anything in the real world, and really exposes its members and participants broadly to a whole host of what 500 years of case law would tell us requires a legal entity. And so their rules are not actually cannot be formally recognized, whereas ours are. Their rule makers are subject to unlimited liability. And because of, lots of advice from, I think, erroneously from counsel to lots of these networks, inability to interact with the real world at all. And so there's a lack of on-chain compliance, and then there's a lack of actual compliant connectivity to any institutional grade, applications on any sort of blockchain networks. And so there lacks this standardization and inclusive ownership. And so that's led to thousands of tokens across hundreds of networks, ultimately leading to this paradox of choice for market participants in determining what network they're going to use out of all these crazy things. 94% of exchange volume in this multi-trillion-dollar exchange, environment is centralized. It goes, you send your money to, an SPF character or, someone who's better, but still someone, right? And they let you match orders, they trade it. And so, they're really these systems are based off of, the actual economic activity being, their tokens are being traded a lot, but, there's a massive opportunity to bring it all on chain. And so, as I said earlier, the introduction, these systems are administrative tech for securing ownership in cyberspace without third parties. The introduction of on-chain programs makes it possible to literally codify into the DNA of these systems their ownership model, which means you can program these technologies with any imaginable ownership model. And so why, I posed as a research question, would an application developer on any network or a regular user or a liquidity miner choose to adopt and to share this adoption, to connect with their network in a system where they don't have ownership versus a system where they do? And so the Telcoin application network, and more broadly, the Telcoin platform and governance system, are the practical, technological, and institutional response to this rhetorical research question. Why would you choose to adopt a network that you don't have ownership rights when one exists where you do? And so by aligning mobile networks, GSMA, and every mobile user around the world on the same standard, and then including the whole value chain, we can both make a scalable and defensible technological business or blockchain network and governance institution that benefits all the stakeholders, and really connects them in a way that's incentive aligned. Why pay gas fees on a network where you don't have ownership when there's one where you do? That's ultimately the question that this system unlocks. And so unlocking the power of application layer issuance, as Leo went through earlier, there's a set of existing rules that we approved in TGIP1. And so right now, what we're just doing is we are implementing those rules in a semi-modified fashion. So there's roughly 200 million. So I think it's like 195 million TEL, right? 194.44 million TEL in the TAN Council safe. And under this proposal, we're going to implement the TEL systems and issuance flows for stakers and developers, establish the platform's application layer for incentives, which includes weekly TEL allocations that will flow to developers and stakers based off of their share of platform production. It unifies the existing merchant and retail staker system into one. Because we're so early, it's pretty silly to have a massive allocation towards a group that is not represented. For the most part, I think bringing everybody together into one model makes a lot more sense. If you're participating, it's a lot less sort of stressful to figure out who you are if you unify them. So there's stakers and there's developers, but there's no longer two positions of developer or of staker that differentiates between merchants and individuals. It's just stakers. And so basically, in order to achieve this mission of having this globally connected blockchain standard, we need to implement this TEL issuance for developers and stakers so we can get GSMA members to build apps on the network. We can incentivize user adoption through staker incentives and enable people to connect. When you go to a new service, especially for payments, right? And that's always been a Telcoin's bread and butter, is getting blockchain payments live. When you go do that, you need to bring the people that you make payments with to that. One way or another, if I'm going to pay you via, let's say, one of our centralized competitors, like a Venmo, well, I better get you on Venmo or I can't pay you. And so these sort of incentive systems, they're across virtually every type of application online these days, but we're codifying it into the actual platform itself to enable the system to generate issuance and people to harvest it based off of their usage and their network's usage of the system as financial payments infrastructure. So we want to foster this on-chain ecosystem that is, through incentives, enables these developers and stakers to actually have ownership and align with the entire value chain. And so we want to empower the value chain with ownership rights, ultimately fulfill the association's vision for this inclusive, decentralized, user-owned financial system. And so what are we proposing in terms of its specifics? So the TAN Council Safe, as I said earlier, has 194.44 million TEL. This would introduce a weekly distribution to developers and to stakers. It would start every Wednesday and last for 7 days. It does not change the eligibility rules at all for developers or the application infrastructure standards, or really besides the actual allocation, which we've decreased to developers based off of the number of them, which I'll get into here. It's virtually exactly the same as proposed. And so basically for developers, there's two ways that you can structure. There's two ways that you can look at structuring, issuance rules. And the formulas that are used to describe that are how much is allocated towards who, and then what is the basis for how you earn that income. So people, like liquidity miners today, for instance, they compete for TEL issuance based off of their liquidity. And so, that's the same with developers, it's the same with stakers, and the same with validators. Individuals produce the system, earn based off the fruits of their labor, income, and vote in governance. And so initially, the rules for developers was to have the same amount of stakers, which is about 3.2 million TEL per week would be harvested. Well, Telcoin Holdings is the only developer, and our goal is to incentivize thousands. There's a diversity of applications building on our network. We want to align the world, truly the world, through the same blockchain network standard. That's how you win, right? Is you get everyone on the same network using these systems, driving volume, and really just making them connected. I mean, the amount of fragmentation is crazy out there. I mean, there's like thousands of chains at this point. And so, anyways, 3.2 million tell with one developer, which is how it would be today. As new developers come online, we've, by the way, already, we are in talks with a number of different developers who want to build stuff on Telcoin Network, which is exciting. And I think in the coming weeks we'll be able to start talking about those more specifically. But that's not for today's scope, and we're not exactly there yet. But basically, with one developer, we decrease it down to 1/3 of the weekly total. So 1.068 million tel per week to developers. And then when another developer joins, 2/3 of the weekly total tel allocation of 3.2 million, so 2.1 million or so, would then be able to be harvested by developers. And then once 3 or more developers start building on the Telcoin application network, then the full weekly amount will begin distributing in this proposal. And then there's the basis for income formula, which is how much do I earn based on what? And so in this case with developers, it's the exact same. It's the referral fees paid to their users, the Telex exchange fees, and the Telcoin network gas fees paid by their user base versus all other developers. And so you have this natural incentive within the rules to have people build on top of these systems. And most importantly, not most importantly, but importantly, and what gets me excited is by tying referral fees to the ownership, to their ability to harvest tel, by tying tel exchange fees, and by tying telco network gas fees, we're really connecting all these apps through the system based off of economic incentives, not off of some super jurisdictional mandate that doesn't, we're here enabling people to participate and to harvest tel competitively, not to, not to restrict them from using the system. We, don't have that authority, but we do have the ability to incentivize people to build. And so it's basically, cut it down to 1/3 of the weekly total to start. And then as new developers come on, up to a total of 3+, then the full weekly will be going. And then the next part is the stakers. So this is, if you are a staker on a Telcoin app, you basically stake tel. Well, first you have to integrate another user's referral code, connecting each other through the same infrastructure. And then you stake tel, refer new users. And today, you earn referral fees, which it's a very interesting mechanism where it can do one of two things. Either, and this all happens in the same transaction as the trade when someone pays fees. So whenever Leo refers Parker to the app, when Parker makes a transaction that pays fees based off of how much tel Leo has staked, he earns a percentage of those fees in real time in the same transaction, and they're always paid in tel. And so that means if, for instance, Parker decides to trade USDC for Bitcoin, then the percentage of fees that are paid to Leo in USDC, they actually automatically buy back tel on TelX, and then they distribute in the same transaction to Leo's balance. That's why if you participate as a staker, you'll see that you always receive tel. It's because it's an automatic buyback machine that defaults to tel when is a different token that's traded. And so in this case, we're now bootstrapping all the stakers with this 3.2 million tel per week, based off of the personal fees that they've paid in the to trade or whatever fees are paid to an application developer during the week, and then the referred users fees paid during the week. And as you'll notice, when I initially named these rules, I named them adoption issuance because it's based off of the adoption for developers of their user base and for stakers of their individual self and their referral network. And so basically what we're introducing today is adoption issuance for stakers and developers based off of their actual use and their user base's use of the system. And by using fees, we can ensure that, there's it comes at a cost. And so therefore, the probability of being DDoS is much less, than if you were to say incentivize people based off of how much they just transfer between each other. You might have some problems. In this case, it's based off of fees. And so the last function of this that is important to note is what I initially labeled proof of alignment. And what that is basically on Telcoin Application Network, you can earn up to, but not in excess of the total. So basically, your total TEL staked throughout the entire period needs to be more than the lifetime TEL issuance that you've earned, plus the current week's TEL issuance allocation. What that does is that ensures that I don't want to shout out any influencers because they've got like a bazillion followers and we don't need the hate, but it disincentivizes mercenary service provision. Otherwise, in other words, it disincentivizes people from who have massive networks going in, referring a bunch of people, but then just like not actually staking TEL or having any real, they can, in that case, they just go out, sell TEL, refer people, sell TEL all day. In this case, they have to continuously add to their TEL stake position to ensure that this doesn't happen. And you could, for instance, introduce mechanisms like locking, but that ultimately, I think, is less interesting than having an active input in production determine the actual maximum that you can earn. And so I encourage people to go read through that aspect, the proposal. Again, I'm sure I'm not explaining it as well as I would love to, but I think it's a really exciting opportunity for us to do a lot of things with the platform that will ultimately scale it, and then at scale, and then at scale, make sure that it retains its user base through this inclusive ownership model that incorporates the whole value chain. So it also has some other exciting aspects. It ties the ownership of basically fees. So when you have fees be the determinant of how much income you make, then who's to say that users aren't asking for more fees? I know that sounds ridiculous, but if you're tying your potential income to how much fees you paid and how much referred users fees have paid, then it really sort of aligns the whole the whole set of stakeholders, with the actual productivity of the system, and by ensuring developers have their earnings are based off of referral fees. We can incentivize keeping referral fees in play for everyone versus potentially requiring them through some infrastructure standards. It's just important to have it be tied to like the actual issuance. So high level, we're just implementing. I'm proposing to implement TEL issuance at a slightly modified rate according to the same rules that we initially set out. And the only real difference is that the allocation formula for developers is in 1/3 increments up to 3 developers, where then the full amount will be harvested. And that's just because Telcoin's the only one to start, and we don't want there to be conflicts of interest. And also, that enables that excess TEL issuance to be used to drive new developers, new stakers. There's 194.44 million, and then you have, let's say around 4 million TEL per week is being distributed. You have, as a council, the capacity to plan and finance proposals within them in the meantime. And then ultimately, with TEL issuance via TEL IP for next year coming out, that'll even further increase you all's budget to do great things. Perhaps you could make a merchandise marketplace at some point where a percentage of fees go to you name it. I mean, there's just a ton of exciting areas. The application developer that this quantity of TEL enables you to finance and plan. And so, yeah, I appreciate your consideration. The last part is that so the technical implementation details, we are pretty much there. We just want to finalize and make them, you know, market ready over the next week. I would say 5 business days or so, maybe I don't know, a week. Then we'll have the technical, very specific technical details there. I mean, the Staker contracts were built from the start to enable TEL issuance in this format because, you know, we knew that this was going to probably be how things would be structured if it was approved. And so, you know, they're pretty plug and play, staking contracts are, but the actual reporting, calculation, distribution aspect, there's a few different approaches to it, and we've got eyes that are working on it now to figure out what's the final best way to move forward. So the technical details will come out next week, and right now is really just sort of like an economic proposal to get things moving and in parallel to that. So welcome all questions. Appreciate you listening to me rant. Hopefully it was enough to get people to understand the proposal. But yeah, please, would love to hear some questions.
I have a few questions, and I the last thing that through the technical implementation. Sorry, no, just before the you you said the safe balance is 194 million, and I wonder if there will be income to provide the safe balance, because if you've got only one developer and 3 million for the stakers, we already have 4 million per week. If you got a second developer, you add 1 more million. So with 5 million or 6 million per week, the safe balance will be empty in about 30 weeks. So that's
Yeah.
my first question.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So basically, there's a few ways. So the first thing is that so we have this association structure, right? And it's a nonprofit, and so the TAN Council probably shouldn't go out and build some system that drives revenue towards it, that isn't like separate as a legal entity from it. You could initiate something on the proposal on the here and finance it, but in terms of its ownership, that would need to be separate from an income perspective. But there's TEL issuance from the TEL Treasury, and that year 2 proposal is in motion right now to get basically here's the list of basically second year TEL issuance proposal is going to be live soon, and so that will significantly increase the amount of TEL that's in the TAN Council safe, so that there's a real budget. I mean, you guys don't have a real budget to build things in excess of this issuance because of the time, because it basically you have this amount now, and then you're going to have more that it flows to the TAN Council safe later, and ultimately either every year that'll be proposed, or some automated mechanism for that once Telcoin network is live will be implemented. But yeah, TAN Council safe will have more TEL issuance should that proposal pass. But yeah, that's kind of how you can think about from the perspective of replenishing the reserves to allocate. And even at a higher level, you can think about so what Leo talked about earlier, which I found really funny. I saw yesterday Zcash proposed what they're calling the network sustainability mechanism, which is the exact thing that I came up with 3 years ago that is being implemented on Telcoin network now, or is really already there. Is basically a percentage of gas fees are are destroyed and then regenerated to the tel treasury. So, when you can do some interesting sustainability formulas to measure the productivity of the different zones versus, so like if there's a ton of gas fees that are paid by apps, um, you can tie, and then you have the gas fees paid by apps that are ultimately burned and regenerated to the treasury. So the regeneration rate, and when the issuance rate uh, to the Telcoin application network or to Telex or the Telcoin network is the amount of tel that's regenerated over time to the tel treasury based off of this regeneration mechanism. Um, when the issuance rate and the regeneration rate are the same, then that network is sustainable. And so the goal is, to have, policy that enables a big ecosystem of apps to develop and to bootstrap stakers to connect them. And then to make that sustainable, have the actual productivity of the area, sort of pay for itself via gas fee burning. So was that uh, okay answer to your question?
I was just wondering if we could run sort of money in this treasury. My second question is about the staker. Just a clarification, just want to be sure. You said about the amount of the fees paid by the person who is referred, and the volumes about your personal fees. So it's an extra earning on top of the fees you already get by
Yes,
your referred people. That's correct?
that is correct, sir. Yeah. So we're introducing 3.2 million per week that stakers can compete with each other for based off of how much fees they pay and how much their referred networks fees are the people they referred, how much fees they pay each week versus each other. So how much do you trade, how much do your users trade versus everybody else, is how that's structured.
Okay, lovely, perfect. Just I
Yeah,
was
so that's
waiting
why I'm
for
so
it. Okay,
excited. I mean,
that's
it's like,
excellent. Thank you. Yeah.
yeah, isn't that really? I mean, that's like, to me, it's such a powerful thing for us to be able to do, is to structure this full value chain where like the app level is earning issuance in addition to earning fees, and everybody's producing this. Basically, everybody in the whole platform is like a consumer producer, a co-producer, where they use the service, and they also earn from it. And so our goal is to include everyone in that model that actually uses the services, because it's just cooler and it's better for everyone. And yeah, this is additive. Here's more tel to ultimately drive more activity usage across and more development. An app that has stakers, I think, is probably in a better position than one that doesn't. And of course, it is when they actually earn developer issuance too. So you have this sort of built-in go-to-market strategy that is already there in the sense that there's referral fees, but we're just pouring gasoline on that fire.
Perfect. I think I have no more questions for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Leah,
I was just
any
gonna,
questions?
no questions. I was just gonna kind of thank you for this because the more I read it, the more excited I get, and it's kind of it's all coming together now, and this is really like a pivotal moment, seeing the vision, and this first IP I think is a great starting point, and it seems like such a good base for future development as well. Um, though I was going to ask kind of in terms of like potentially weighting even like referral fees versus telex exchange fees versus gas fees. Like down the line, we could maybe, if we find some data that kind of suggests people might be gaming one more than the other, or one type of fee is actually more beneficial to the network than the others, we can kind of amplify the incentives on one particular kind of fee versus the others, to kind of drive, I guess, like incentivization, but on an even smaller scale, so we can really like dial it in. I don't know if that actually sounds reasonable to you. I'm kind of thinking out
I
loud,
do. I
but
think
yeah,
it's something I've thought of. I've thought about it. I think it's a great idea. I think and for down the road, I think
yeah,
it's perfect. Like those. Oh, I don't know. Say perfect. We don't know. It's all an experiment, but I think it's a good idea on the surface, and we will have the ability to take the info from this and see, as you said, what's actually the best way to incentivize developers at scale, and are there any issues with this structure? I think we'll find that out pretty soon and continuously improve it. And yeah, I love that idea.
absolutely, yeah. I think
And
equal weighting is the way to start, and then we can really kind kind of improve
yeah,
on
now
that
it's
as we
just
go.
it's just like it's like no weighting, right? It's just like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
guess equal. Yeah, it'd be no weight. Yeah,
Hmm.
and so it's yeah, I think that's the move for now. But I certainly want to, like, over the next years, just continuously experiment with how can we make the best possible incentives for the app layer.
Yeah, it's awesome. And then like the actual mechanics of kind of technical implementation later, we can get some really neat stuff going on there as well. So a really nice base and room for growth as well. It's exciting.
Agreed. I think it's like, I mean, obviously the Telcoin network is, I mean, like that is everything you work towards, and then everything becomes fun. You get to build everything on top of Telcoin network once it's live. Big
Yeah.
shout out to those engineers. But yeah, the application layer to me is very close behind being like the thing I'm most excited about in the world.
Awesome. Yeah, it does seem
And I
like
don't think
this.
people even know. Like, I don't think people have like fully read about stakers and stuff. Which, I understand. Like, it's a lot of there's a lot of docs, and I know that there's everybody has like full time jobs and stuff and all that. But I think by getting visibility out there about this opportunity set, it's going to drive a lot of users. It's going to, during the time period when the apps are, the whole world is disconnected from crypto legally, from a banking perspective. And, this in the interim, between now and when that is improved, you know, which is an exciting thing to talk about separately as well. But it sort of compensates for any excess cash in fees that people have, as well. So hopefully it's like um, a I can't remember. Oh, a subsidy. It's like in a sense, it's
Mhm.
a subsidy and an incentive. And there's a big design space for actually subsidizing certain fees by issuance too, in terms of TAN harvesting rules with, say, developers. There's a big design space for doing initial issuance, which I had called inclusion issuance, but kind of wanted to just remove, before TGIP1, to make it more simple. And now I think this is probably the right path. So yeah, I appreciate the kind words, Leo. I'm excited to get this proposed and implemented. And I think uh, another week with the team, and we can have a technical implementation that's workable, scalable, and either an MVP structure that we improve upon. Which, if it turns out that we need to do that, like there's some more like less on-chain mechanism, more off-chain. If that's easier to start and we need to improve from there, I think that getting issuance live and working according to these rules is probably more important than having the perfect technical scalable infrastructure to do it. As long as everything is right, and fair, and in accordance with the rules themselves, it should work.
Mhm. I'm in your camp there, but I'd also be interested if anyone actually disagrees with that here or has any
I
other.
think they need to see. we need to
Yeah,
share the two alternatives for them
true,
to weigh, right?
true. Yeah.
And we're like
And I guess
close but no cigar.
that is the next kind of action item. So we will update the forum with those technical details and um, kind of keep everyone posted on that. So stay tuned on that, and we can build out this TANIP a bit more and discuss there. And then on the next call here, which will probably be in 2 weeks' time. Um, yeah,
One question. Uh,
What is it?
um, Proposition in the time, let's say for 1 year, it will work like that, or should we just wait for another proposition later on to change the numbers? So what would be the easiest thing? I mean,
Yeah,
for instance,
great
if
question.
the again in value, it will be a lot for developers and incentives for the takers. So, what is the easiest way to change it? Because if we have to apply for another proposition, maybe it's good to just say this one is voted for 1 year, and let's say in 1 year if we want to renew this one. No.
I think it's a good. Like, I think it's in principle a good idea. The way I would structure it personally is just here's the default set of rules, especially because the tin safe is basically accrued till throughout this whole time. Um, I would probably just have it be the default rules and then continue to experiment and change them actively based off the info you get. You could say it to be for a certain time, but the way we've structured doing these weekly durations makes it so that you could change it within a week, which is the duration of the TANIP process, basically 5 days. Um, is it? Yeah, it's 120. Is 120 hours 5 days? I just can't remember. But
yeah,
yeah, it is. So, anyways, yeah, I would just say you can change it as soon as within a week of being implemented. But maybe it does make sense to just say, all right, well, after week whatever, it's at this amount, and maybe it automatically decreases from there, or you just say, here's the fixed duration of we're going to run it for 20 weeks and see how that does. I think that could work too. It might just not be necessary though to piece me. You tell me what you think.
No, it's difficulty that you said. It's easy to change if we want to change it, so we're not to set any limit. So thank you.
I'd say it's
I think it's basically by having a specific timeline, it takes away from your flexibility.
I'd say it is worth considering the balance though, because while flexibility is useful for us, it can be a bit of a hindrance. So in
That's
terms
true.
of people who are coming along and building on the network, they would they would prefer stability, which we would see as a constraint kind of thing. So I think there is a bit of a balance there that we need to strike in terms of showing everyone that this is a platform that they can safely build on without kind of moving the goalposts at regular intervals. So we do need to try and kind of forecast what might be the best level of issuance ahead of time to at least get most of the way to a good answer rather than back and forth, kind of
Yeah, and
destabilizing
then at the
this.
same time,
Yeah,
you can add tell for other ways. Like you could add. Sorry to interrupt you, which
no,
I
no.
definitely did. I just guess I'm excited, but you can always add new. Like if you have a specific timeline for how you guys want to implement this, you can always just add another type of issuance too. It's not like that
Mhm.
isn't feasible. So you'd keep the what's there's a specific like game theory term that I cannot remember, but that it's like the I'll come back to it, but it's like, yeah, the dependability that the rules won't change against your interests is super important. And I agree with you there. So yeah, I think play around with it, and I look forward to what you guys ultimately come up with and propose, and really appreciate your time and consideration.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else for any more, or we good to leave it there? Liberty Lad, I can see your mic is in trouble, but we might have to go async and catch you up later on. Creams, did you want to ask something? Yeah.
Hello?
Hi.
Hey, how you doing? I'm sorry I joined late today. I don't know if this was discussed. Are there any ideas of bringing TEL to more exchanges in America?
That was discussed on the Platform and Treasury Council meeting, which was about 2 hours ago, or it started about 3 hours ago. There'll be a YouTube recording of it up tomorrow. I'll post it in here in the Discord and on X as well. So keep an eye out for that. Hopefully that will answer your
Thank you.
questions. Cool.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Cool. Let's leave it there. And thanks everyone for coming by. And see you in 2 weeks' time. See you on the forum before then. Cheers.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
see
much,
you,
guys.
and thank you very much. It was excellent position. Looking for your work. If you worked with your boy for that, Leo, congrats.
Oh. All right. Cheers, guys.